This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
Everybody's wondering what the UCP is up to. Everybody's wondering what Danielle Smith is up to. What's the plan? Now that the federal election did not go according to plan, Alberta's government, the UCP government, rolling out, among other initiatives, Bill 54, which seeks to reintroduce union and corporate contributions, ban tabulators, and lower the recall threshold. We talked about this a bit on our most recent episode with Stephen Carter. Did you check out that banger? In my mind, easily one of the most entertaining episodes we've ever done. And as I was just telling one of our guests for this episode, this I guess would be a soft introduction, a soft good morning before we do the official one.
Oh, thank you.
Nobody wants to have a soft good morning. What? Stephen Carter joining us on the show yesterday. We're talking about Bill 54, and we're talking about that recall threshold, Erika, Barootes, and everybody's going, well, this obviously has everything to do with satiating the Alberta separatists. So that's something that we're going to get into on the show. We will be joined by your colleague, your partner in crime, your co-host on the Discourse podcast, Cheryl Oates, in just a second. She'll be joining us, zooming in, but it's nice to have you in studio. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
How are you wrapping your mind around what went down on Monday? Everybody knows, you wear it on your heart and your sleeve. You're a proud conservative. Not the way, obviously, that you hoped it would go, and probably not the way you thought it would go.
You know what? I actually thought it was a Liberal majority, so yeah. I guess I'm happier. Everyone was a loser, right? Carney didn't get a majority and has to do coalition to stay in government. Pierre didn't form government and lost his own seat. Singh lost his own seat and stepped down as leader, and that party was decimated. And then the bloc went down. Like, nobody came out a winner. Maybe Donald Trump. Yeah,
kind of a strange dynamic. Looking forward to getting into it with the both of you. We've got our coffees topped up and we're ready to go. We haven't talked a lot of provincial politics on this show, so we're leading with what the UCP is doing.
Because there's nothing happening.
Well, yet. It's kind of like, you sort of like these calm moments. One of my favorite movies of all time is Braveheart, and there's like those moments before the war, where everybody's whatever they do. What do they do back in the day? Sharpen their steel? I have no idea.
They do face paint.
I don't have dirt under my fingernails. I don't know what they did, but you're right. They did the face paint. They were getting ready to make war, and that's kind of the sense you get. So we'll be taking a look at the Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power today, getting into your emails, and of course, continuing this conversation. An important one is, I think it's safe to say that eyes across Canada are looking at this dynamic between the prairie provinces, in particular Alberta and Ottawa. The Premier kind of already putting the Prime Minister Mark Carney on notice. We'll discuss the power dynamic in that circumstance as well. Like, who holds more cards? Is it Carney? Is it Smith? Smith's talking a big game, but I mean, unless she's prepared to go all in, push all her chips into the middle and say Albertans are prepared to leave, then what's this really all intended to accomplish, except for maybe keeping the grassroots happy? A candid conversation. We're teeing it up right now, but first I want to let you know that the team at Business Career College has a brand new designation specifically for financial advisors and financial planners. Decentralized finance, digital asset adoption are on the rise. There is no doubt about that. That is not a matter of opinion. That's a fact. The question is your team ready? A widespread crypto adoption is coming, and Canada's leading the way, and that means that financial advisors are being asked about crypto and decentralized finance, and they need solutions and advice from financial institutions just like yours. Investors managing their own digital assets need advisors with crypto experience to help them make informed decisions and protect their wealth. Enter the CDAA. The Certified Digital Asset Advisor program. You can find more about it at businesscareercollege.com. They've been leaders in online financial training since the late 1990s. I mean, they are the spot if you're looking to level up and future-proof your career. Using the promo code Ryan20, that's Ryan20, all one word, they'll knock 20% off your investment in that designation. The CDAA, the Certified Digital Asset Advisor, online right now at businesscareercollege.com. As we say hello to the co-host Not joining us in studio, zooming in. We sure appreciate her from Calgary, Alberta. Cheryl Oates joining us as we get into what Danielle Smith is up to. Cheryl, thanks for making time for us today. We were chewing the fat, shooting the breeze with your podcast co-host who says there is absolutely nothing going on at the Alberta legislature right now, and that's why it's justifiable that Real Talk's not been spending much time lately talking provincial politics. Both of you have a lot of experience in provincial politics. Is it accurate to suggest there's absolutely nothing going on at the ledge right now?
I think that is exactly what the government would like you to believe. But this is a government that is very skilled at saying one thing and doing exactly the other thing. So yes, there's lots going on at the legislature right now from all sides. We have really democracy impacting legislation just being introduced. I'm sure we'll talk more about it. We have, who needs the NDP? We have Pete Guthrie in the legislature standing up to hold the government to account. So yeah, lots going on. Can't wait to talk about it all.
Yeah, no kidding. Pete Guthrie, and I know for this audience, I typically don't have to provide the backgrounder on stuff like this, but Pete Guthrie, of course, the former infrastructure minister under Smith, who spoke out against the government in the context of this alleged procurement scandal, said that he had concerns, said he didn't feel like they were being properly addressed. They began by removing him from his ministry and then ultimately decided to boot him from caucus.
He removed himself from his ministry.
Fair enough. Yeah, and obviously didn't see a fit there in cabinet, and then the caucus voted to kick him out from the party, and then that's when he's really doubled down on all of this, and like Cheryl said, probably the most effective opposition in the legislature for now. Well, on the conservative side of things, I hate to paint you into the corner, but I know you're proud about it. We might as well call a spade a spade.
When would you ever not call me?
What's your position on the Guthrie thing?
Yeah.
I've had candid conversations with high-ranking conservatives involved in government.
Am I not high-ranking conservative?
Well, I'm just saying you're not officially tied at this very moment in the role that some of these folks are.
It's not bad talking into a microphone with
I'm not
Cheryl about
naming
it.
names, if you know what I mean, but the position that they're taking, candidly, the Premier's not said this, is that Guthrie's gone off the rails. He's nuts.
Yeah.
There's no fit for him here. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And I guess that's the type of thing you would say if you're trying to create some smoke screens. But what's your take on it?
Well, I would have loved to see him stay in caucus, because when you put someone on the outside and they can go rogue, they can say whatever the heck they want. And Pete Guthrie is very vocal. I really like him. Him and I were both on Premier Smith's transition team. I've known him for a long time. If he feels that he can't be a part of that team, the ministry thing made sense. Like, I don't want to be a part of this government. Caucus is different. Obviously, caucus made that decision. Would have loved to see both him and Scott Sinclair stay on the team. It doesn't help. And they don't have big numbers. So, like, a significant majority just doesn't help the government dynamic. And then you have people that can throw grenades at you however they want from the weird back corner of the legislature.
Yeah, and with receipts, right? If Scott Sinclair, the Lesser Slave Lake MLA, who on this show let us know exactly why he was basically voting against the budget. He wasn't happy with how his constituents were treated and some highway improvements that he was looking for. I feel like there's
he
maybe
did get
a little,
his highway.
Yeah, I feel like there's maybe a little more to it than that. But maybe we'll get to that in just a moment. An update, and I'll reference reporting from Jack Farrell with the Canadian Press, former Minister Guthrie tabling cabinet notes calling for transparency, basically making these available, which makes it more difficult for the Premier, quite frankly, and her team. Says he's been pestering the government in question period, tabling a series of documents in the ledge in an effort to provide transparency. Said Guthrie just about 24 hours ago, quote, "I tried to work within the system to shine a light on the issues, but the government wasn't interested in hearing it. In fact, they're still now in denial." That's a heck of a thing for a former cabinet minister to say like a month after he was booted, Cheryl.
Yeah, and I think we have to think about what it takes for a cabinet minister to put themselves in this position. Like, once in a while, you see backbenchers sort of rebel against a government that they are a part of because they're unhappy with, not having the influence or the voice or the, being on the inside of the closed door in a government. This was a sitting cabinet minister who took this position. He left his cabinet post, which means not just his position of influence, but also, a reasonably big pay bump, gave that up, left that. Now he's out of caucus, and now he's not just standing up to say the government has done something wrong, but he's literally tabling his cabinet notes, his handwritten cabinet notes, which is almost unheard of in Alberta, to have someone who was just recently in cabinet talk about things that happen behind cabinet closed doors and really shine the light on a lot of inconsistencies that have existed before in Adriana Lagrange's story, but now we have a cabinet minister calling her out saying, no, it doesn't actually make sense. The timeline doesn't actually make sense. And in the best case scenario, for those who haven't been following, the minutia of this, in the best case scenario, he's basically saying you left a really important piece of detail out of this when you asked the health committee to fire the AHS board. You left the piece out where they had, asked to go to the RCMP. And that's pretty damning.
So, the provincial government and the Premier, Danielle Smith, have had the luxury of a federal election over the past 5 weeks or so to be able to sort of capture and grab and hold the attention of Canadians who've probably, for the most part, in the West, been paying less attention to provincial politics, and but now the spotlight's back, right? And if anything, the spotlight's shining brighter than ever because now the Premier's rattling her sabre, looking at Ottawa, ready to get that fight going again. That's always been good for business for Alberta politicians, but where do you see all this going, Erika?
Well, I think we'll get into what Bill 54 looks like. The AHS stuff, the AHS scandal, like May 30th, I think probably a lot of people have marked on their calendars when reports are coming back. So I think it's also been quiet because that work is happening behind the scenes. I mean, again, you have Pete Guthrie vocalizing and bringing that up every day. It's just not making airwaves, and now it might, right? So they're going to have to be on the defensive as a government on a lot of things leading up to May 30th, and then you'll see what that report comes back with to see, what else is there.
Yeah, Cheryl, you were Rachel Notley's director of communications for a lot of years. Hypothetically, in a situation like this, the team is putting insulation in place as we speak between the problem and the Premier, right?
I mean, I can't imagine a world like Danielle Smith's government. The reputation of her government is at stake here. She should be directly involved in how this is going to roll out. Like, I know she said she wants to be removed from it. It has nothing to do with her. She didn't know about any of it. But she is, the top of the hierarchy. She's the one who's going to be held accountable when all of this information comes out. So, I mean, if it's me, I wouldn't be insulating her. She wears this no matter what. She's got to take a role in how it's managed going forward.
Yeah. What do you think is the right move for the Premier right now and for the government? What's the message need to be to Albertans that are wondering? I mean, except for there's people, the diehard supporters that will always be in the Premier's corner no matter what. Same as Rachel Notley had her diehards, same as Jason Kenney had his diehards and all the Premiers before them. And then there will people that can't stand them, that will oppose them no matter what, even if it's good policy, even if it's good performance. But all those folks in the middle that are wondering right now, that including people that voted for this government, people that voted for the Conservatives saying, gosh, I'd love to continue to support them, but if some of these allegations are true, I cannot support them. What does the government need to be communicating besides it's being investigated and we can't comment?
Totally. So I have said this before, and I can't remember if it was on this show or on our podcast. They should have dumped everything. Like, on issues management, they should have got in front of this. And I think the challenge is what does this report say? What does the RCMP say? They better be pretty consistent. Cheryl is right. She'll wear this regardless, and it's unfortunate because I truly believe she is not responsible for any of this, but ultimately the buck stops with her. And so whatever the report says, they need to shape up and ship out the people that maybe were a part of it. I would have done that earlier, but I think that they're sticking with their lines.
But I just want to jump in to say, I know it's easy for us to say, well, the Premier didn't know anything about this. But truthfully, I cannot imagine being in a Premier's office. I can't imagine being in Rachel Notley's Premier's office and the health minister comes in and says, I want to fire the whole AHS board. And she's like, okay. Yeah, I have no questions. That's totally fine. So maybe Danielle Smith didn't know, but you cannot in that position, like, this is your government. Yeah. You will hold all accountability. You can't not ask those questions and then just, say, oh, I didn't know, sorry. I think accountability falls with her.
The accountability stops with her. I think we've talked about that Premier's office may have known, or there was individuals within that office that were part of those conversations. Danielle Smith is very very trusting and loyal to her ministers and to her team. So when she has someone advising her or the minister coming and saying, I need to do this, she absolutely probably was asking questions or should have been asking questions. But I think if a minister comes, she very much gives the authority. It's not a dictatorship style leadership that she puts on. So if the minister comes, she's very much okay, you think this is the best move? Okay.
I'm just laughing that.
Well, it's just different from Rachel. It's definitely different from Rachel's style.
I'm laughing that holding someone accountable when a minister comes and said, I'm going to fire the whole AHS board. And then the idea that asking questions about why that is in the interest of the government or the public, that would be a dictatorship.
But Danielle Smith has never said that she didn't ask questions. She just said,
If she did, then she would have known something.
Well, she could have asked about the things.
Both.
But the
you
decisions,
either stayed out of it or you know the answers to the questions.
But there's a difference between firing a board because they're no longer serving their mandate or firing the former CEO because they're no longer doing their job or staying in their scope or whatever it is. Of course you would know, but you're not meddling. And I think that's the difference, is the premier isn't meddling in this. We are talking about, if we get back to all of it, it's about procurement. In what world would the premier know about procurement?
Well, it depends.
In this world.
In this world, maybe.
Because even Pete Guthrie didn't know about some land titles transfers within his own ministry because there's bureaucrats to do that too.
Sure, and I don't think that any person with a semblance of reasonable thought would expect the premier or cabinet ministers to know absolutely every single detail of everything. What type of asphalt are we using for the new highway widening and whatever. We don't expect the premier to know that, but we do expect the premier to be able to explain the scenario. I mean, the optics of it are obviously very, very difficult, right? I mean, the optics boiled down to its core looks like, I'm not saying it is, but it sure looks like we're giving sweetheart deals for tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in exchange for, plum gifts and luxury boxes. And I won't even say that I believe that some guy's getting hundreds of millions of dollars of healthcare contracts for letting a few people into a playoff game. I don't think it's that simple.
It's a really bad deal for the government.
It's a really bad deal, and it's not worth the political risk. But I'm not saying, the optics on it, Cheryl, are very, very difficult to explain.
But soon, I was just going to say, maybe it wasn't worth it for hockey tickets, but the government has just amended laws that would allow any companies, hypothetically, any companies that were offered sweetheart deals to also contribute whatever they want to the UCP.
And the NDP.
And that is a big deal.
And you're talking about Bill 54, obviously, the corporate donations.
We'll get into this union and corporate donations. I mean, some of the scuttlebutt I've seen, people are saying this is actually better for the NDP than it is for the UCP.
That's my interpretation.
It's better to reopen union donations for the NDP. In theory, corporate donations, maybe not so much. I'll put it in front of these two. These are the co-hosts from The Discourse. It's Erika, Barootes, and Cheryl Oates. By the way, you can find them on YouTube. A new episode out less than 12 hours ago. So thank you to the two of you for being here, and you can also find them wherever you get your podcasts, including on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. This episode of Real Talk is happening with the support of California Closets, absolutely undeniably the best in the business when it comes to custom closets and storage solutions for the entire home. This is a proudly Canadian-owned business. All of the installations that their team is working on in the province of Alberta, guess what? Manufactured right here in Alberta using materials sourced in Canada. That's something that they're very proud of. As a matter of fact, we know there was an international conference just a short time ago, and I love their Instagram. You can follow them on Cali Closets Alberta. They got a photo of their entire team wearing Team Canada hockey jerseys together. How great is that? Everything they install is guaranteed for life. They can work with any budget. You can request your free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. Hey, if you don't have plans on the 14th or 15th of May, or if you do, get set to cancel them, because if you work in the energy industry or you're energy adjacent, you're going to want to be at the first ever Nisku Energy Show being held at the fabulous Silent Night Sports and Entertainment Center. This is going to be an amazing opportunity to meet leaders from all parts of the energy sector, learn more about local innovation and collaboration. They've got a job fair. Premier will be there for the breakfast on the 14th of May. I'm proud to be hosting it. Explore the possibilities and excellence in the heart of Alberta. This is proudly presented by the Leduc, Nisku, and Wetaskiwin Region Chamber. You can get your tickets today at yourchamber.ca. At Friesen Brothers, they've always been about The Butchers. You know, Friesen Brothers started 70 years ago with a butcher shop in Hinton, Alberta, and they've grown from there to 16 locations, still family-owned. And they're restoring the lost art of butchery by training a new generation of skilled butchers who break whole-hanging carcasses using time-honored techniques. Each piece carefully aged to bring out its best qualities. You, as the consumer, have options for 30, 60, or even 90-day aged beef. If you can believe it, the longer it's aged, the deeper and more distinct the flavor becomes. Visit a butcher at Friesen Brothers today or check them out online at friesen.com. And all this talk about budgets and money management, that's all the election was about, even Donald Trump's angle on it, right? What does this mean for your bottom line? What does it mean for your family's wealth? Well, North Road Investment Council reaching out with a special initiative for real talkers. You know, typically in Canada, investment advice and financial planning is delivered through a bank or a bank-owned brokerage firm. Not at North Road. They want to give successful investors a chance to experience wealth management advice on a platform of true independence. Your financial plan delivered in connection to an hourly fee, not from commissions paid from investment products. You can learn more about what sets them apart, including their digital risk advisory services. I love that. They're looking out for their clients like nobody else does. They're online at northroadic.com. Hanging out with the host of the Discourse, Cheryl, Oates, Erika, Barootes. Bill 54, probably the most noteworthy thing that I see about Bill 54 is changing what citizens need to do to organize to trigger a referendum. That may not be the most significant part of the bill when it comes to the politics and the finances and the bottom line, but that's the one where I went, oh, come on. This isn't all. This is extending an arm to Alberta separatists, it seems to me, right in the spotlight. But how would you characterize Bill 54 before we really get into it?
I think that there's some things that are worth doing. This is kind of a omnibus piece of legislation. We've seen a lot of that from the government. So they'll always have like good things. And then there's things where I'm just like, why the hell are you doing this? So,
which is the one that you wonder why the hell are they doing it?
I think the corporate and union donations. I don't think, and Cheryl just ran a campaign in Saskatchewan for the NDP. Like, I don't know. I don't actually believe that corporations, this will inject a bunch of money. I think, to your point earlier, that the NDP and the unions actually have more opportunity to now donate. So I think it was a huge miss if it was like a political move to get corporations. Saskatchewan does allow corporate donations, and I don't think it's a surge there as opposed to just individual donations, which we have now. Cheryl, I'm just like, why?
Cheryl, you were on the team with former Premier Notley when those union and corporate donations were eliminated, correct?
It was Bill 1,
the
NDP government.
Yeah, can you give us just a real quick synopsis of what the thinking was there in getting rid of it, and your thoughts now that it's being brought back 10 years later?
Yeah, the thinking was that it's not corporations and unions that decide elections. And basically, when you take big money, which is what we call corporations and union donations, when you take big money out of politics, what you do is put the power to support political parties back in the hands of voters, theoretically restoring democracy and making sure that elections are played on a level playing field and that it's the voters that have the voice, it's their money that have the voice, and that no corporation with a lot of extra money can influence election outcomes.
I will say that sounds very sunshines and rainbows, because I can tell you what unions do really well is third-party advertising. So if I was this government, I would have actually...
corporations.
Right, but like I'll say as a conservative, we actually don't do third-party advertising as well as the left does. And so if I was the government... I do, trust me. I've been a part of PACs. They're just not done as well. So if I was this government, I was making this political, like I wouldn't have brought back corporate and donations. I would have gone after the rules, because to Cheryl's point, like, yeah, the NDP got a win by looking like that they're like, oh, we're making this fair for everyone. I think when they did it political, because they already have the outlet of third-party advertisers, which they didn't change those rules to. So I think the government made a huge miss here, but I also don't think that Bill 1 NDP was like, oh my gosh, we love how, like, we're going to make this so democratic. It was a political play by the NDP to remove them because it makes them look good, but they have a different conduit.
I just disagree with that. I disagree with everything.
Of course you are going to. Like, of course you're not going to say my party already had a back door. No,
Is
I'm
it
finishing
my
my
turn?
sentence.
Okay. Your beginning of your sentence interrupted the middle of mine, so I'm just going to keep going.
We'll go now.
I'm going to stay out of it.
The NDP did this, like exactly what I said. This isn't sunshine and rainbows. Yes, third parties can advertise. Any third parties can advertise. And if you've watched any election, if you've watched Alberta elections, there are very conservative, focused political advertising running from outside conservative parties as well. There's industries that pool their money together and run advertising. And I feel the opposite, Erika. I think that the advertising that comes from third parties supporting conservatives in Alberta is really, really effective. And yes, unions do advertise outside of the NDP. Unions do their own advertising. It is largely done on behalf of the union. Like there are some PACs set up. You just saw one in British Columbia last year. There are some PACs set up, but largely unions do their own advertising and it doesn't directly align with NDP advertising. So sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes it's not. But truthfully, like I feel good knowing that no party has an advantage because they've promised a company something and said, if you can donate X amount to our campaign, we will give you that in the next election. That is not how Alberta should be run. It shouldn't be run to whoever the highest bidder is gets whatever they want in Alberta. Government should be held to account for implementing the wants and needs of the citizens of Alberta, what's in the public interest. And when we have union and corporate donations, that takes that away. So I am very worried about this coming back into Alberta politics. We had it in Saskatchewan. Both union and corporate donations exist in Saskatchewan. You can also donate from anywhere in the country to Saskatchewan campaigns, which is pretty unique to Saskatchewan. But both sides donated. Like you do see corporate donations flowing in Saskatchewan quite readily.
Interesting. I didn't know you could donate from anywhere in the country to Saskatchewan.
I have a membership with the SAS party.
So you can donate.
I could donate.
You
just
do
don't
donate to the SAS party?
Yeah, but you don't get. It's the tax receipt thing is different because you don't live there.
Got it. 10-4. Lauren is in our live chat powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider, and he says Naheed Nenshi is getting warmed up. I feel like some people might need to be reminded that Naheed Nenshi is the leader of the Alberta NDP, respectfully, to be honest with you. But one of his MLAs was spitting fire in the Alberta legislature very short time ago, hours before we're recording this episode. She's the MLA for Edmonton Rutherford. Jodi Calahoo-Stonehouse had this to offer up.
Mr. Speaker, it's the day after the federal election, and I think it's time we offer congratulations to the Premier. After all, she's done more than anyone else to ensure last night's Liberal victory. Instead of working to fix health care or do anything to help ease the pain of the affordability crisis, this Premier spent hundreds of thousands of Alberta's taxpayers' dollars parading around the U.S., sipping cocktails at Mar-a-Lago and going into the American news day after day to talk about how Pierre should win. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, she was inviting administration officials to interfere in our election on behalf of the Conservative leader. What did the Premier have to show for the efforts of this Conservative cause? She certainly was not invited to Poilievre's rally in Edmonton. In fact, she was told to stay away. And in the final days, she was benched entirely, sent to the other side of the world to be kept out of trouble. Considered by Conservatives to be a liability during the campaign, what can we expect from this Premier going forward? Ah, yes, the same old refrain. She'll use the election results to stir up Western grievances and the foolish Alberta sovereignty sentiments to score some cynical political points. You heard it here first, Mr. Speaker. But Albertans don't want divisiveness. Albertans don't want to separate. They want a government that can work with all of its neighbours, federal, provincial, for the betterment of all Canadians. When the time comes, Alberta New Democrats will be ready to make that offer to the people of this province. But in the meantime, we're just wondering, Mr. Speaker, will the Premier have to declare all her time and energy spent in this campaign as an in-kind donation to the new Prime Minister? We'll look forward to finding out.
Okay, so that's Jodi Calahoo-Stonehouse in the legislature. Tracy in our live chat says, I watched that 3 times yesterday. Jillian, whose students are writing a test as we speak. Jillian's got her earpods in. She says, I literally just said, ooh, out loud while the kids are writing a test. This is a murder. It's actually pretty good
I was
delivery.
chuckling. Yeah, you and I were both laughing through the whole thing.
When it comes to the theater of
yes.
politics, that was theatrically brilliant, but she's also touching on something pretty important. I want to ask the Conservative first. What do you make of it? You're laughing.
Oh, what she said? I think there was
the content of what she's saying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the premier was not invited to a rally. I don't think that she was quote unquote benched. I mean, she was in Japan during the at the last week of the election. So
just by coincidence,
and I know that missions are planned months in advance. So
I think it was Johnny that referenced the pop culture reference of Homer Simpson sort of backing into the bushes. But that was kind of the trend through the campaign. She
had some flops at the very beginning,
week
right?
Number one,
the
she was the newsmaker.
And I said, like, as watching the conservative side of things, like, that was unfortunate when a leadership candidate or a leader of a party has to answer for another premier, right? Like, you don't want her to have to be in the news. And I actually think she heard and how the Breitbart story came out. I think that she was like, okay, like, this wasn't helpful to my counterpart, so I'm just gonna tone it down.
Cheryl, what did you make of the delivery?
Yeah, I mean, Jodi Calahoo-Stonehouse is such a talent. If you watched her sort of like come, a lot of people met her for the first time during the leadership. Her energy, her optimism, like, it just bubbles over. And that kind of energy brought to a statement like that is just a joy to watch. And in terms of the substance, I think it's true. Like I said on mine and Erika's podcast many times, does Danielle Smith actually want Pierre Poilievre to win? And truthfully,
I said no.
It's in her interest. It's in her interest to not have him win. Like, it is. The Liberals have been just a too convenient political foil for Danielle Smith. They are a perfect political villain. They are likely the cover for the next election that Danielle Smith calls as she seeks a mandate to fight Ottawa, and it's the cover for all the wild stuff that the UCP is going to do over the next couple of years. So I think it's accurate, and Jodi Calahoo-Stonehouse's delivery is amazing.
I'll give the NDP credit. Like, it was good. Cheryl's right. Like, I think when we interviewed on our podcast all the NDP leadership candidates, like, I'll say it, Jodi was my favorite. Like, she is just very personable. I like her as a person. And strategically, that was one of the only things I've seen the NDP do right from a comms perspective, is putting Jodi up. Like, I think that she was, to Cheryl's point, she was the perfect person to deliver that.
Did you see her on this show during her leadership run for the Alberta NDP, where she basically called my interviews bullshit? She was like, your questions aren't tough enough.
She's feisty. Like, I really like her.
I was like, this is amazing. I loved it. And she is a real talent. You're right. But she touches on something, and like I said earlier, the Bill 54 thing, to me, the big story, I'm not saying it's the most significant, but the big story is taking the laws around, or the requirements around Albertan citizens, and this is good. This is action in democracy. This is citizen involvement. I celebrate it, and I applaud it, and I don't reserve my applause for initiatives that align with my personal perspectives. But I used to think if you could get 600 signatures on something in the province of Alberta with 4.5 million people, you deserve to have a referendum. And if you can do it in 90 days, which was the requirement, it's even more impressive. Well, the law is now, it's being dropped. You got to get 177,000, a drop of more than 60%. And of course, you have another month to do it now. You've got 120 days. And I can't think of any other reason that the timing would be. I mean, this obviously directly correlates to Albertans that want to leave right now. Ryu Street Fighter is in our live chat. He says there's too many people, too many Liberals, completely ignorant of how angry Albertans are. 10 years of Liberal damage, and the country votes them back in. Explain how anybody wants change. Nobody actually wants change. That from Ryu Street Fighter. There's a lot of people that are really pissed off.
Oh my gosh, I love that his name's Ryu Street Fighter.
Yeah, I know, it's good, right? There's a lot of really good
I had a crush on
handles.
Ryu.
Oh, now you're going to get DMs from Ryu Street Fighter.
Well, I kind of agree with him. But I do think so. The citizen initiative in the recall legislation, I mean, we saw that when the UCP introduced this, the thresholds were too high. So I completely support reviewing and amending that legislation, because you saw people go out to call for Jodi Gondek, but the thresholds are too high because it was on voters, like the voter percentage, not the population. And so I do think that it was just not feasible. It was bad policy, or just not where it should be. So I support the amendments. I do get the timing though, and that's where it's like just say even legislation has been in place. Like when they did the municipal stuff, you knew they were going to do stuff with elections Alberta again, with how the provincial elections go over. So they've been this has been in the works for months, and to go through the legislative process also, it's just now it's the timing. So I think they need to say, listen, we've been working on this for over a year, because I know they have. We're bringing it forward, and you know what? The timing's quite interesting. We'll address that. But either way, this is about democracy, and this is about allowing more people to vote. And I do think that there's a lot of interest by Albertans right now to have that conversation. What do we want to be as a province? What does Western alienation look like to us under a different government? And that might come forward. But I do think the government saying, this isn't. The timing may have not been planned by them, but you got to address the.
Of course, the timing's planned.
No, I'm saying they were amending this a year ago. Like, this has been in the works of reviewing this act for a long time.
I don't know about that. I think.
Did we not hear the recall legislation was bad? This is all bad, but I'm saying you got to address the fact that it's this is coming forward. I just think they're not talking about the timing or the comms of it. And Cheryl and I both did been comms. You had to know that was the first question that was going to come.
Okay, Cheryl, you go, then I will.
But also, of course, can you imagine if Danielle Smith introduces an opportunity for Albertans to talk about separation during the federal election? Obviously, this election was this introduction was timed. Obviously, she held it back because she knew that it would screw over the CPC, like many of her actions during the campaign did. And then dropping it. I mean, she said during the campaign, I'm basically crowdsourcing questions. The government's not going to introduce a referendum question on separation, but just so you know, if you wanted to, you could. And then the day after the country goes red and Alberta goes blue, now you can do it. Now we have a mechanism for you to do it. That is not coincidence. That is, this is a premier saying, I'm not a separatist, I don't support separation, while actively making it easier for people to have a conversation about separatism.
Yeah, I think that, and I'll reference, I think PNC Bio is not alone in the chat saying, I just want to see a referendum on this once and for all. Yeah. And I think that there's people, and I'm not even going to call it on the left and the right, because I know a lot of personal friends, right-wingers, quote unquote, that their Canada includes Alberta. And I'm sure that there's maybe some lefties that would leave for other reasons. Yeah. So I don't think this is a left and right issue in so many ways as it's a how do you view Alberta's place in Canada issue. Yeah. Pretty interesting. I'm not sure if you saw this release from the Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation and the Mikisew Cree First Nation, an open letter, April 30th, to Premier Smith, a cease and desist on separatist threats. Says, Premier, you're attempting to manufacture a national unity crisis by enabling a referendum on separatism and a fanatical cell of individuals at the exact moment that Canadians need to unite against Donald Trump's America. The province of Alberta is on treaty lands. Please be advised that your irresponsible statements and actions are in breach of Treaties 6, 7, and 8. We demand you immediately stand down from this conduct. Our treaties are sacred covenants and are to last forever. Alberta did not exist when our ancestors agreed to share the land with the Crown. The province has no authority to supersede or interfere with our treaties, even indirectly, by passing the buck to a citizen referendum. If you or any Canadians are not happy living on treaty lands, they are free to apply for citizenship elsewhere. Signed by Chief Sheldon Sunshine and Chief Billy Joe Tuckerow.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful. A cease and desist to the Premier. That maybe doesn't even necessarily need the legal teeth in so many ways as that'll be put in front of, let's say, citizens, 4.5 million people, via shows like this that are going to start to consider an angle on this that maybe they haven't considered before. Absolutely.
And they should be informed, right? If you're going to have a referendum, you should have all of your information. And I think looking at treaty rights, land, everything, people have to consider that when making this decision. I will say, though, I never thought I would have people reach out to me about their frustrations and wanting to have the conversation. I think there's people that want to have what does Alberta look like in this Canadian landscape right now? And so, yeah, sure. This timing probably, I would say likely I agree with you guys that it's strategic to put it down now, but these amendments, I agree, needed to happen. So yeah, I think there's a lot of people that also want to have that conversation. And I'm surprised by the people that have reached out to me saying, I'm really frustrated. Look at how the election came. Basically, Manitoba forward is blue. And there's some frustration, I think, that's rising and showing how Western alienation is actually very predominant right now. Want to have that conversation. Doesn't mean that they're going to vote in favor of it, but I think opening up that dialogue we are at that place. And I think Saskatchewan's there too.
Cheryl, what are the options? Like when we're talking about how does Alberta fit into Confederation or what does Alberta look like moving forward? There's kind of one of two options. There's many other options, repair the relationship with Ottawa, try to build consensus with First Nations and other provinces, see if we can bridge something to Quebec, not literally, metaphorically, et cetera, et cetera. There's many ways to answer that. But at the end of the day, people are talking about two things. Either you stay or you go, right, Cheryl?
Yeah, and I mean, truthfully, if the Premier was just looking for a better deal for Alberta, come to the table with a better deal. So far, she has done a lot of feet stomping, and she's done a lot of tweeting, and she said in the same breath in her congratulatory sentence or her congratulatory statement, she says Mark Carney demonized Alberta. Let's have an Alberta reset. That is not the way that you come to the table diplomatically. And we know Danielle Smith can be diplomatic when she wants to. That is not the way that you come to the table if you're looking for a reset. You say, listen, congratulations, Mark Carney. You're the Prime Minister now. I have clearly laid out my conditions. You said you're going to do things different. I'd like to see it. Let's give the guy a day to try to build a better relationship with Alberta before we talk about the province separating. And yes, there is a part of me that says, okay, you know what? You want to sow discontent. You want to manufacture a unity crisis. Bring it. Let's do it. Let's have this conversation. But also there's a part of me that looks at Quebec, who had this conversation, who didn't end up leaving the country, and their economy there was devastation because of this conversation. Because Quebec talked about separating from Canada, Montreal is a much different place today than it would have been. Capital fled, companies fled. That instability in Alberta would be so detrimental to our economy. So part of me also wants to say, can we just do this in a normal diplomatic way as part of the country we all care about?
Les in the live chat powered by Park Power says maybe people should Google how a province can separate. It takes more than some pissed off people. Did people forget how to Google? He says this is just another Danielle Smith distraction. We also have Aid 234, all caps, yelling. If Alberta was independent, it would be the 14th richest economy in the world on a per capita basis. Let me let you know. Let me remind you that on the 12th of April, you can find it on our podcast archive or on YouTube under the Flamethrower chapter, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. We had one of you, a real talker, reach out with a series of bullet points on what Alberta's economy would look like, hypothetically, in theory, were it to separate. We fact-checked it, and it turns out to all be accurate or close to accurate, but that doesn't necessarily make it feasible. Pretty interesting. That's our April 12th edition called Sovereign Alberta, Masters of Our Destiny. Jillian referenced the murder that was Jodi Calahoo-Stonehouse in the Alberta legislature. How about another one? How about Jamil Jivani? Let's move over to Ontario for a second. This is wild.
It is.
This was my favorite, an interview with David Common and the re-elected MP, former radio host, guy knows what he's doing with a microphone, who absolutely eviscerates, and I don't think David Common saw it coming. He's doing like a ride. He's at the victory party, and he's like, how do you, what do you think of how it all went down? And congratulations, and you won your seat, but you lost government. Kind of one of these standard interviews, like the one I did with Mike Lake. But then all of a sudden, somebody throws gasoline on the fire, and it was Jamil Jivani.
I do want to ask you, Mr. Jivani, because you've just spoken to your supporters, a large group that's here at the pub here in Bowmanville, North Oshawa, and you said to them, among other things, that Doug Ford was a problem for you in this campaign. You said that he sabotaged the Conservative campaign. That's your words. You said he was a hype man for the Liberals. Take me through how you see that.
Yeah, well, look, Doug Ford just went through an election. I have differences of opinion with him. I don't like how he's managed healthcare or education, but out of respect, we didn't say anything. Federal party, we didn't get in his way. When it was our turn to run an election, he couldn't stay out of our business, always getting his criticisms and all his opinions out, distracting our campaign, trying to make it about him, trying to position himself as some kind of political genius that we needed to be taking cues from.
Was it him specifically? Was it his campaign manager, Corey, tonight? Do you see Doug Ford as a problem for the federal party in the outcome of this race?
I see Doug Ford as a problem for Ontario and for Canada. I think he's not doing a great job in running this province, and now he's trying to exercise his influence over other levels of government, and it's not like this guy is doing anything particularly well. I mean,
you did used to work for him.
I did. I'm speaking from experience. I tried to fix problems in this province, and he kept getting in his way and all his goons around him all the time. They wouldn't make anything better, and now we're seeing him because this guy's a political genius because he beat Bonnie Crombie and Stephen Del Duca, and now we got to sit around getting advice from him? No. He has taken the provincial Conservative Party and turned it into something hollow, unprincipled, something that doesn't solve problems. He's glad-handing with Chrystia Freeland, having coffees and lattes with Mark Carney, and I'm sitting here saying we need to be fighting for change and something new and something different, not being a hype man to the Liberal Party.
Okay, so he's a problem for Ontario and Canada with his goons around him. And then the latte blast.
Yeah.
Lattes with Mark Carney. There is trouble in Conservative paradise.
Again, I was laughing throughout the whole thing, but in all seriousness,
It's not great.
No, it's just, you know what? High emotions on election night. He did win his seat, Jamil did, but, just keep your mouth shut. That's not helpful. If you're critical of Corey tonight, who I also don't support running his mouth during the campaign, shit on the campaign the next day. But, I think that if Jamil went back, because he is a seasoned communicator, I would hope he would be like, maybe I shouldn't have said that, and just kept high to messages. I assume that his emotions got the best of him from that evening. And if I was the journalist, I would have leaned in like he did, right? Be like, well, didn't you work for him? How do you 100%. Know? And he just kept spoon feeding him stuff to keep it going.
David Common handled that masterfully.
Oh, yeah. No, I think, yeah. But either way, as a Conservative, even with when, Danielle Smith, who I love and support, when she then takes the narrative from Pierre, same thing with what Doug Ford and Corey Tonight did. So I'm like, guys, just all of you shut up.
Yeah. I felt like the Corey Tonight thing was different in that I think that he was trying to wake everybody. It was like smelling salts. I think he was trying to wake everybody up because he saw the campaign trending in the wrong direction. Jamil
he has Jenny Byrne's number. They're not they're always love or hate relationship between the two of them. I think a lot of the stuff that Jamil, that Corey, it was personal stuff. And I think regardless of what color what color you are or ideology, it's just don't air that outside. Why?
Yeah.
Why? It wasn't constructive. Sure, Corey, I agree with a lot of things you said, but I don't want you to air it to the media. You can call Jenny. You can talk to people in the war room. Maybe you're upset you weren't there. I don't know. But it's just it didn't help us.
I'm starting to wonder how much of this animosity is about Jenny Byrne and not Pierre Poilievre. If you want some insight into that, check out our episode with Stephen Carter, our most recent episode, where he talks about this April 30th as the worst marriage in political history. What was the first thing you thought when you heard Mr. Jivani go off, Cheryl?
I think that you don't light up the Premier of Ontario like that unless you are gunning for Pierre Poilievre's job. And there are a lot of people who know Jamil Jivani's name today that didn't know it before election night. He made himself known. He made his position known. He put himself forward as a leadership candidate that night. And if we know anything about Conservatives across the country, as well in Alberta, we know that Conservatives eat their own. And so I'm not surprised to see all these fractures within the party. I don't think this was just emotions getting the best of you. I think this is a sign of the internal fractures that exist in the party and the people that are already clamoring to take Pierre Poilievre's job.
Interesting.
I don't necessarily agree. And if people want to hear more about what we talked about with Premier Smith's statement, compared it to Scott Moe's and this issue, that's kind of some of the key topics of our podcast that just came out.
Where can people find your podcast?
Oh, you can find it on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast.
Nice job.
Thanks. Yeah. I've really been practicing that one. I used to flub it up all the time. So, no, but I don't know. From everything I've heard from Conservatives, they're happy with Pierre. And there's even talks, not Kerry Diot, because he's put out a statement saying, I'm not giving up my seat, which I didn't think he was going to, but that there's talks that someone is going to give up a seat for him to run. I don't think, because it's a minority, that it's strategic for us to get rid of our leader, but we've done it before. And Cheryl is right. Conservatives have a history of kind of eating our own.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's what Jamil was trying to do, but I also don't think after any other election with our Conservative leaders, we're they're done. Pierre, I don't think he is.
Jill in our chat says if Jamil put even 1% of this energy toward his buddy J.D. Vance insulting Canada, had the Conservatives stood up rather to Trump with some of the energy, they'd be in power right now. Check out this photo, by the way. This is university chums. Weren't they like roommates or something like that? The Ontario MP and the Vice President of the United States, who just of note.
J.D. Vance is really like glowed up.
Yeah, J.D. Vance has lost like 100 pounds. It looks like unbelievable. Is that a liability, Cheryl? You don't apologize for like who you went to university with before either of you knew that you were going to go into politics. The fact that he has a close friendship and is therefore tied to J.D. Vance at a time like this, is Mr. Jivani a liability to the Conservative Party considering all the factors at play right now?
Listen, like in this current context, it's really hard to tell what's a liability and what is actually helpful. Like, we look at the relationships with Donald Trump and what's helpful. Maybe, a way in, a candid conversation, someone who's got your phone number, maybe that's helpful. A public alliance with someone who's active, with an administration that's actively threatening Canada, maybe that's hurtful. Honestly, there's no real rules these days when it comes to our relationship with the United States, so it's tough to say. I hope that that's a relationship that can be leveraged for the good of Canada.
Yeah, that's a fair comment for sure. Ms. KD says, that political genius, Doug Ford, just won 3 elections. Fair enough. Someone else, I can't, the chat's moving fast today, which is awesome. So I lost the handle, but somebody basically said, are the Conservatives trying to lose 5 straight elections? They said this negativity doesn't fly east of Manitoba. You wonder if they got to change their tone a bit. My take on this, Pierre Poilievre, there's no way, honestly, I feel there's no way Pierre Poilievre has to resign as leader. I don't think it's the right move. I don't think that the Conservative Party has an heir apparent ready to go. I think he created great momentum. I think he had some bad strategy and got some bad advice and failed to pivot and failed to act quickly during the campaign. I think he obviously needs to get a seat into the House of Commons. I don't know if it's true they're making him leave Stornoway till he wins a seat. Does that sound right? That's kind of harsh, isn't it? Can you imagine? He's just like Googling Airbnbs like down the street. He's got to, no, it's seriously. People are saying like actually buy under the way it all works. Apparently he's got to, I don't know whether or not that's true.
I saw that too.
Remember, you remember? Remember back in the day when Preston Manning said he wasn't even going to move into Stornoway and then he did. Oh, wait, there's a personal chef and a driver. But I do think he needs to find his way back in. But the delivery on the election, aside from losing, and I'm not trying to be funny, but aside from losing, it was actually a pretty solid performance.
It was a good speech.
And I know that they want another crack at it. And depending on how it all plays out with this minority government, if Mark Carney can't build that coalition or can't build cooperation with either the Bloc or who's remaining on the NDP or convince 4 MPs to cross the floor, then there's elections soon enough. This isn't going to survive for 4 years.
I was going to say, I think the person that has the hardest job isn't Pierre Poilievre right now. It's Mark Carney, because he's got to bring all of Canada together, right? And I hope he does. And I hope he reaches out to Western Canada and tries to repair that relationship. And then he's got to deal with with the Trump administration. He's got a harder job right now, and then being in a minority and partnering up with the NDP that doesn't have a leader right now to keep his job. So again, like strategically, I don't think Pierre's out, because we could be in an election in 12 months or 2 years or something like that. So I don't think Pierre has the hardest job out of the leaders in our country right now.
Blah Sheep in the chat says, Poilievre had a few mistakes, but he ran a great campaign, all considered. He was tarnished by mainstream media, mostly covering Carney. I have a comment on that. He says, I think if he's defunding the CBC, he should have gone on the CBC first. That from Blah Sheep. I don't know if you can, and I'm not saying that Pierre Poilievre has done it himself, but I see a whole bunch of, I can't even imagine what your social platforms look like right now. Oh my gosh. Mine are like a hot mess.
Like my algorithms, maybe?
Well, I'm just saying, like all your friends on Facebook and that sort of a thing. I mean, I've got my fair share.
I've got texts from people from Saskatchewan.
Ardent conservatives, but like they're all blowing their gaskets and losing their minds right now. But at the same time, you can't complain, Cheryl, about inequitable media coverage when you've been stonewalling and cock-blocking the media the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, the Conservatives literally like caged the media on their tour. They allowed 4 questions a day. They controlled which outlets asked the questions. They offered no follow-up questions. And then you're mad that the media doesn't cover you? Like that is nonsensical. And truthfully, the Conservatives don't even need, like, the reason that they don't care about mainstream media coverage is because Pierre Poilievre's videos get just as many views as mainstream media coverage when he's talking directly to people. The Conservatives suffered nothing in terms of their base that they would have gotten from letting mainstream media in. But it's completely hypocritical. It's ridiculous to say that the Conservatives didn't get fair coverage when they literally offered themselves up to no one.
Was it a
just
mistake?
took a page out of the NDP provincial last election, 2023, of like not letting media in. So I do think
that is not the same thing.
You don't let a bunch of media in. So,
okay.
But I don't
So
think Pierre should have.
clear
Oh,
up
now
what
who's
what-
interrupting?
Well, hang on. What are you alleging? And give Cheryl a
Cheryl
chance.
can go first. Cheryl can go first.
Thank you. Because Erika's alleging that the NDP blocked the media from our campaign in 2023. Inaccurate. The NDP blocked anyone who had publicly published hate speech was not allowed to ask questions. We couldn't keep them from our events. A lot of our events were public. And I can say that I was at every single event of that tour. So they were at all the events. If you had published hate speech, you were not allowed to ask a question. There was 2 outlets that were barred from asking questions. That's it.
Kenzie says, Ryan, the reason Poilievre stayed away from mainstream media is because they hammer him incessantly. Murray says Alberta will never give Mark Carney a chance no matter what he does. It suits its purpose to rage farm as much and as long as possible. And Bunny Slippers, were you on the Western Standard broadcast on election night? Is this true? Bunny Slippers says the Western Standard was using the CBC's interactive map on election night. Is that true?
Yeah.
That's fucking bullshit.
It was funny. Like,
No, that's
because
not funny. That's actually pathetic.
Well, it's because Election
Yeah,
Canada was also
agreed.
down for 90% of the evening.
Oh, so
But this is why CBC is important.
It's why it's important. Western Standard's coverage would have been nil.
Is it
0,
1 billion
and
plus
ineffective.
another
Oh,
150
give me a break.
million
That is
important?
amazing that they. No offense,
But
I wasn't
I
watching.
think
but-
traditional media has
But
its
just
place.
think, Erika, if Western Standard, if another media outlet, and Western Standard wasn't the only one, if Western Standard was using CBC's interactive platform to get real-time election results, think of the people across this country that were using CBC to get real-time election results because Elections Canada was down. That's just an example of the public service that CBC provides and why it is so important for people across this country to get accurate information.
So we have to have 2 publicly funded entities to be able to report on elections because Election Canada sucks. Like
it's essential. It's 2 entities, but it's really one. The way that they work. I've never worked for the CBC, but I've seen its inner workings, and they serve different
so
purposes.
are you guys
but they
asking me if I
collaborate.
want to defund the CBC?
Oh, sure. You want to go there? You want to go there?
Like I think that there's a purpose for media, but do I think that the CBC needs to be able to do like everyone else, like Global and CTV, and operate finding sponsorship, finding content? You're successful
agree
by
with you
doing
there.
it. So I just think that they're just now leaning. It's like, keep asking for money. Like, do your job and show your business case, and maybe you can be funded. But like the fact that they're competing, or traditional media, I think that they have a leg up. I also think they should disclose as bias. I would be biased if I was with the CBC and one of the candidates was going to defund me and I'd lose my job. Like Rosie Barton has been especially biased this election on her coverage of Pierre and her reporting.
That's your feeling of it. That's your interpretation or your perception.
Jason
of it.
Kenney called her out not once but twice on her
guess
fact
what?
checks.
Yeah, so
But Jason Kenney's also been called out.
Well, but Jason Kenney. The point is, like,
Also
Jason,
love him on
listen,
X.
Yeah. By the way, yeah, Jason Kenney's resurgence. There's kind of like a George W. Bush thing happening there, where a lot of people that couldn't stand him before are now like, shit, man, I'm kind of agreeing with some of the stuff that Kenney's saying. But let me also point out, like, Kenney was on the panel. To have somebody on the panel there with the green light to call out the host on something that they don't agree with is accountability in action. And I do agree with you that the CBC is not on a level playing field, but it's not supposed to be on a level playing field. And thank God it's not, because that playing field right now looks like 1,000 dogs have been pissing on it. It's not exactly healthy. It's dead. And all of the broadcast entities are struggling big time. All the newspapers are dying. And more than ever, we need reputable, real-time, fact-check journalism that's available across the country to inform Canadians. Do I think that the CBC's mandate should be reviewed? Absolutely. So should anything that's receiving that amount of government funding. Do I think that the CBC should try to generate revenue? As it does. But yeah, could it do more? Maybe. Should it have to be profitable to be feasible? Absolutely not. Because that's not
I think
the point.
where we disagree.
But listen, Erika, like our education system is not profitable. Our public transit system is not profitable. Healthcare is not profitable. Nothing that government invests in, for the most part, is profitable as an element or as a requirement of its survival. And I think that that's an important point to make. The whole defund the CBC thing because we don't like some of the reporting is the same sort of bullshit as around we're taking our ball and going home and we're leaving Canada if we don't get another pipeline.
I think your
totally.
point, though, should he have gone on the CBC is kind of
Of course
set the
he
tone.
should have.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think again, he should have done more media. That is a very conservative strategy, is like, even with, you see candidates or local candidates not doing their debates. I hate that. Like, I think you should at least do one, to talk to your community directly. But they do have, more of a say less strategy when it comes to media. But to Cheryl's point, like, do they even need it? Because they are quite effective on their own grassroots communication.
The Conservatives?
Yeah.
Well, obviously not effective enough.
Yeah,
in Western Canada.
That's the thing, right? I think they're very effective to talk to their base. Like, if when Poilievre wants to talk to his base, you're a subscriber to his YouTube channels, you're going to see him. But clearly, the base has a ceiling. And the Conservatives failed to grow beyond that in this election. And if they want to be successful in the next election, they're going to have to start talking outside their echo chamber. That means talking to mainstream media, and that means using things outside of your platform. And that means maybe making yourself a little bit vulnerable and taking the risk, because I believe that those MPs are capable of taking tough questions from the media, and they should.
Right. But I don't think it's fair to say that they didn't get out enough. Like, this is a record high amount of seats for the Conservative.
But you lost.
I understand that, but I'm saying, like, you can't say that what they were doing wasn't effective, because they grew over 20 seats. And so, yes, they didn't form government, fair, but like, and we lost, and my team didn't win, and it's not in government. But at the same time, they did grow in support by Canadians. Atlantic Canada is a prime example of the fact that, like, there was a significant effectiveness to the idea of this change that they're talking about, that people were frustrated with the Liberals. They didn't form majority government. And so I think it's unfair to say that the Conservative tactics. Now, the other thing that I think is unfortunate for the Conservatives is the ballot box question wasn't about economy and cost of living. It was about Trump and the relationship with the U.S., which, again, Mark Carney was more strategically positioned to address than Pierre.
Is your 10 o'clock meeting in person or via Zoom?
I can be late if you're
asking.
Can
you do it from here? Can I keep you 10 more minutes?
Yeah.
This is our inside joke, everybody. I always ask these two for 45 minutes, and it ends up being an hour or an hour 15, and they're so gracious with their time, and we appreciate it. But I have to just...
We block the calendar.
We block the calendar. This is music to my ears, and
I think
it's one of the
my invite
reasons
to
why
Cheryl for this.
Yes, I
is
think
still,
you disclosed that you expected this to go a little long. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, and more. I just want to ask you for your general election observations through an Alberta lens, because there were a lot of storylines that played out, and I think we would do a disservice to this audience if we didn't touch on them. Before we do, I want to make sure that you're aware of what the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce is up to. In particular, on its Instagram page, they've got some great resources here as everybody's sort of figuring out what these election results mean for them. Check them out on Instagram at Edmonton Chamber. They've got the State of Our City address, by the way, coming up a week from today on the 8th of May. But first, they want to talk about what the election results means for public safety, mental health, downtown recovery, and more. They're calling for bold economic action following Prime Minister Carney's election, and they've got some great events coming up. You can learn more about the benefits of membership by checking out their website. You'll find the events calendar there as well at edmontonchamber.com. Our friends at UCAN Youth Services doing incredible work with young adults and teens, for that matter, 12 to 17-year-olds through a couple of different programs. They're a nonprofit charitable organization helping young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. Their Relentless Outreach program, I told you about that on April 30th, working with 12 to 17-year-olds who are in handcuffs all the time, quite frankly. It's heartbreaking stuff, but they're doing amazing work opening doors and opportunities. And then they've got the Verto and the Road to Work programs. If you know an 18 to 24-year-old, someone in your orbit, it could be your son or daughter, your niece or nephew, the kid living down the street. They've got so much potential. You can see them thriving, but it's just not happening right now. There's barriers, there's roadblocks in the way. UCAN has programs where they can learn how to, the Road to Work program, for example, how to run a saw, how to work with hydraulic tools, safety certification, CPR. They get these young folks ready to entry-level job hunt, and of course, they're paid along the way too. Great opportunities. You can find them at ucan.ca. And if you're an employer hiring talent in entry-level positions, reach out to UCAN today. They've got a great partnership with IKEA, as an example. Big employers seeing big results thanks to UCAN Youth Services. All right, so polling aggregators had the Liberals looking at 5 to 7 seats in Alberta. That didn't happen. Polling aggregators had a real throwdown happening in Edmonton Griesbaugh. Maybe the NDP incumbent Blake Desjardins would keep his seat, hold off Kerry Diott. That didn't happen. For all intents and purposes, it was an absolute blue wave across the province of Alberta this federal election, which isn't unusual, but considering the factors at play, Cheryl, were you surprised?
I was surprised. I live in Calgary Centre. I'm surprised that Calgary Centre stayed conservative. And in the beginning of the results coming in, it did look like it might flip Liberal. But I'm surprised it stayed conservative, especially since Confederation did flip Liberal. I'm shocked to see George Chahal lose his seat in Calgary as well. And, obviously disappointed that the NDP didn't hold on to Griesbach. And I thought when you look at the poll aggregator, every single seat in Edmonton was in play. There was not a safe Conservative seat in Edmonton. And I think that was probably true earlier in the campaign cycle. Like when you saw the Liberals really at their peak, I think we would have seen the Liberals pick up a lot of seats in Alberta. But that really, if you look at Alberta region, the Conservatives shot up in the last 10 days of the campaign. They shot up to 60% in Alberta. And it just makes winning anything for a party that isn't an incumbent really, really difficult. So I was a little surprised, but when you looked at those polling aggregators on the last day or any polling firm on the last day that was looking specifically at Alberta, that is really where the trend was going.
I've got to mention, when you're talking about storylines, Edmonton's mayor on leave, Amarjeet Sohi, getting walloped in his riding. He said he's not going to run for mayor again, and I don't think he possibly can, but that's another one that we should put on the record here. Were you
so
surprised?
No.
You said you're so happy.
So happy. But I also wish he just wasn't coming back to be mayor, because it was a clear symbol. I think that was a protest vote against how frustrated people are of his mayor tenure, and as well that he left to go.
So what you're alluding to is that he's still mayor until October.
That's what he said.
And his staff is still there.
Yeah.
And he would be a lame duck mayor coming back. I have heard some rumblings, not from the mayor and not from the mayor's office, but I've heard some rumblings out of City Hall that he's considering resigning shortly.
Oh, bless his soul then. I hope that's the case. I guessed 3 seats. I think, because this was on Western Standard, so it's on the record. I think I said 3 Liberals, but it turned out to be 3 seats. So I'm not super surprised. We both live in Edmonton Centre. That went Liberal. I'm not surprised by that. I had been door knocking, and that is quite a back and forth, and especially once Randy Boissonneau was removed from that and Eleanor came over, I think that there was obviously more appetite from people that maybe
Eleanor
voted.
Olszewski, yeah. There were a lot of would-be or past Liberal supporters that were saying there's no fucking way that I'm voting for Randy or the other Randy.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think that I wasn't surprised by Edmonton Centre. Obviously, Edmonton Strathcona, not surprised by Heather. Rumor that she might be the leader of the NDP or interim leader. Yeah, federally. So she's been there, stalwart. I was surprised by Confederation, so I do agree with Cheryl. I thought either George Chahal was going to keep his new seat, but with boundary redistribution, I think that didn't play to his benefit. And I was surprised with Confederation getting it, not Calgary Centre, but it was, the silver lining, I guess, that there was definitely that blue wave, that there's definitely a strong Conservative support in Alberta, and that, the aggregate doesn't make us stand up from traditionally what we were. Maybe we were moving more progressive, but nope.
Gilles says there's no way that Heather McPherson was going to lose her seat in Edmonton Strathcona. Everybody's wondering now if Rachel Notley's going to throw her hat in the ring for the federal NDP leadership. Nobody knows, except for maybe Lou Arab. Nobody knows Rachel Notley better than Cheryl Oates. Do you think it's? I know you're going to say I don't speak for Rachel. It's not up for me to say. But do you think it's something?
I'm not going to say that.
Okay.
Cheryl answers this question on one of our podcasts.
You think? Oh, which one? Is she going to do it?
So I'm in a group chat with Rachel and with Lou, and every time I get this question from a reporter, I tell Rachel, I said you're going to do it, just to troll her, because I find it very, very funny to see the reaction. She's definitely not going to do it.
Definitely not.
If you want a great headline, supporters are still holding out hope. I would love to see Rachel Notley run for federal leadership. I would love to see her, go take on the party and help rebuild it. I think she has absolutely no interest in doing that at the moment, but I hold out hope.
Cheryl, why do you think? I guess I am asking you to speak for her, but what gives you the sense? That's a really. It would be a hell of a lot of work. You are rebuilding a party, but Mark Carney also just proved that you can rebuild a party in 10 weeks. Yeah.
And Rachel could rebuild that party. She totally could.
I 100% think that she could do it. She just doesn't have the appetite for it. She's got private sector opportunities. What is it?
Yeah, I mean, Rachel spent like 18 years as an MLA, and she spent 10 years as leader of the party, and she spent 4 years as premier, and she's just finally like got a little bit of her private life back, and she's got her private sector stuff going on now, and she's living a good life without people, parsing the details of every word that she says, and I think she's enjoying that. So I don't think she has any aspirations to go into federal politics.
Yeah, we're 4 days away from, as if I need to tell you, 4 days away from the 10-year anniversary of the Orange Crush, of the election that rocked Alberta to its core.
Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah, Cinco.
Drinking a lot.
You were drinking a lot.
A lot of marks that night.
Yeah, I bet you were. Cheryl, in closing, as we thank you both for your time, and I'm going to ask you both this question, but you were there. I watched you work. You and I were texting that night as I was trying to get your boss on my show the next morning, and everybody was trying to get your boss on the show the next morning. What's one thing you'll never forget about May 5th, 2015?
Obviously we knew, like in the last week especially, that we were about to form government and that was the likely outcome of the election. But there's a moment in my mind that night, because I was working the floor as people watched results come in. I was working the floor, and I remember a reporter came over to me because we were flipping between the major network screens, and they said, "Flip to CTV right now. We're about to call a majority for you." And my heart just like dropped into my stomach, and I was like, oh my God, it's real. Like, it's actually real. And then to see NDP majority on the screen, like that little moment of that night, because the rest was a blur, is something I'll never forget.
Yeah, no kidding. How about you? What do you remember about that night?
Okay, so I was really going through my own journey of like, are you PC or Wild Rose?
Okay.
I was running Chris LeBossier's campaign.
Oh, a very progressive
Edmonton,
conservative.
Rutherford, yes. Still to this day, I love him. He's great. But I was sitting there.
I think so too, and not just because he's the CEO of our presenting sponsor.
You're welcome, Chris. So just underhand pitch that.
Thank you. There you
You're
go.
welcome. I'm learning how to do this podcast
You're
thing.
doing a very good job.
But no, I was running his campaign, and I think like for me, it was like, yeah, you're Wild Rose. And I was, the whole election was kind of having that, like, where am I? So when that was solidified, it was like, okay, you can now go be Wild Rose.
Was there a particular policy? Or was there something?
I don't think that Jim Prentice was my cup of tea. So maybe it was that, like the leader influence. But it was just also like the change was coming, the tone of like, the old PCs are no longer relevant. And I think I was going through that as well. And so I then let my little wings fly and went, even more right. So
there you go.
That's where I am now.
That's, what I appreciate is that both of you, you declare your affiliations, you declare your allegiances, and you hash it out every single week on your podcast. I enjoy it. I consume your podcast. I subscribe to your podcast, and I want to encourage our audience to do the same. If you don't already, you'll find the Discourse on Spotify. You'll find them on Apple Podcasts. Of course, you can find them on YouTube as well. Do Erika and Cheryl a favor. When you're there, make sure you rate and review the podcast. Make sure you leave a comment on the YouTube episode, and it helps it.
Oh my gosh, our comments are
people.
So great now.
I'm going to get into some. I keep trying to let you guys go, and then I keep trying to let you stay. I don't know.
I do. The comment section is actually like what I like the most about the podcast.
So let's get into this. We'll check this out. So
Cheryl's doing our TikTok, and like those comments are also crazy.
Oh my gosh, I know. Johnny and I are like, we should just do entire episodes on just the comments. But so we have Stephen Carter here. Here's some comment. This is interesting. We'll use this to wrap.
Yeah.
But we release our full episodes obviously in our shorts. The whole show or the best moment of the show boiled down to 60 seconds. That's where you can find us on Instagram and TikTok, same as these two. And then also on our Real Talk YouTube channel, our highlights, which you can check out. These are anywhere from 30 seconds to 15 minutes. It depends. Making the content nice and easy to share. And we're talking to Stephen Carter, the strategist, about Pierre Poilievre losing his own seat. And where does he go from here? We both agreed that it is absolute lunacy to suggest that Poilievre would risk running in Edmonton Griesbach. There's no way he does that. I don't think he runs anywhere in Alberta. But let's get to some of the comments. Dimitrian says, I live in Griesbach, and if Poilievre runs here, I will make it my life's work to make sure he loses. Spartisan Hack says you can't bribe an MP for his seat. There's a lot of ways to do something that, if it looks like a bribe and walks like a bribe, it's still not necessarily legally a bribe. DL says Canadians said no to Pierre after having that seat for 2 decades. He should not be able to take someone else's seat.
Those are where the gold
Okay, let's get to the
sometimes
replies. So someone says you shouldn't be able to take someone's seats. And then Matthew says, well, Canadians actually gave Conservatives 25 more seats this election. The riding of Carleton voted against Poilievre. The final vote, 43% Liberal, 41% Conservative. That's a country split down the middle. So your claim that Canadians don't want Poilievre or Conservatives is just false. Pamjamas, which is an amazing handle, says, in my opinion, Poilievre tanked an absolute shoe-in because he couldn't see that the political landscape had changed, or he needed to change tactics. The ability to deal with uncertainty will be a critical skill in dealing with Trump and a chaotic global economy. The fact he couldn't even hold on to his own seat shows that he doesn't have the confidence of Canadians. Your concern that he can only win a completely safe rural riding just proves my point. He absolutely should resign. Matthew's back in there. Matthew's going to war for Poilievre. Says his riding was redrawn after last election, included a very red rural area of Ottawa. Like the guest, Stephen Carter said, Poilievre's Conservatives received the most votes they ever have and picked up more than 20 seats. They picked up more new seats than all other parties combined this election. That from Matthew. That's just a
Thank you, Matthew, for your service.
Yeah.
You know why I love the comment section of our podcast is because there are people obviously that support my partisan allegiances, and there are people that support Erika's, and they're like they're almost equal.
It's amazing.
And so if you go through the comments, there are people that are like, "Oh, Cheryl, you snowflake. We don't want to hear about how sad you are about this anymore." And then there are people that are like Erika, like calm down with your conservative love fest. And so I just love reading them all.
Yeah, we've got a Matthew in our YouTube live chat right now, powered by Park Power, who says, "Can you please clarify which Matthew?" Some people don't want to. He's like, that's the other Matthew. We got a few Kens in here. We got a few Jills. We got a So it's, but I love it too, and I think that's the sign of a healthy show and a great audience is when there is diversity of opinion, and we sure have it. I mean, some people think I'm an absolute moron, and they're here every single day to remind me of it.
Help you. Yeah.
We roll out the red carpet every single morning. You want to tell me what a buffoon I am? Welcome. Thank you too. We love you very much. You're doing a great job. Again, the Discourse on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube. We'll talk to you again sometime soon.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks for doing
Ryan.
this. You bet. This conversation made possible by our friends at Complete Care Restoration. This is the season, and I hate to say this, but it is a fact that we're going to start hearing about wildfires. We're going to start hearing folks talk about their businesses impacted by air quality, smoke damage, not to mention sewer backups, not to mention everything else, hailstorms, whatever it is. Oh, man, hailstorms. Complete Care Restoration has more than a quarter century of experience restoring properties and rebuilding peace of mind. If you remember one thing, if disaster strikes, don't let it get worse. Don't let it sit there. And if you don't know what you're doing, don't try to fix it yourself. Complete Care Restoration has been in the business long enough that they've established themselves as one of the top performers in the country, and they'll work directly with your insurance company to give you that peace of mind and take it off your plate. They've got emergency services available, ready to respond 24/7. You can learn more about how they operate at CompleteCareRestoration.ca. And a quick note to those of you that are right now either underemployed or unemployed, or maybe you're just not happy with where you're at. Your employer doesn't give you the opportunities you know you deserve, or you're just not feeling inspired. I guarantee you're going to love the culture at Kuby. You can find them online at Kuby.ca. That's Kuby.ca. In particular, click on Solar by Kuby, and you can check out the careers link there. They've got job openings currently right now. I'm going to take a live look at their website. A journey person in Lethbridge, a solar sales expert in Kamloops and Kelowna working remotely, a solar PV expert in Calgary, a designer in Edmonton, an apprentice electrician in Kamloops and Calgary, and the list goes on. Journey persons, opportunities are there. Kuby is Canada's fastest growing solar installer, and you can see why when you see the quality of their work. We're looking right now on YouTube at a condo installation they did. They do barns, they do office towers, they do houses, cottages, and cabins. Heck, they did the Edmonton Convention Center. You can request a free quote on their website anytime at Kuby.ca. Les says the very first comment he ever made in the Real Talk chat was Ryan needs to stand closer to the razor in the morning. You know, I always used to be clean-shaven, John, back in the day when I was working in television news in particular as like a reporter, like an on-camera reporter every single day before they let me share my own opinions. Mm-hmm. And clean-shaven was kind of the way that people operated there. And it was one of my bosses, actually, that came up to me. And he says, I've seen a trend on TV. This was like in, 2009. He goes, I've seen a trend on TV when more and more men are going unshaven. More and more guys are letting their 5 o'clock shadow show. And I said, are you giving me the green light to rock 5 o'clock shadow on breakfast television? He said, yeah. And I've never gone back. I don't think I've shaved my face clean in 10 years at least, maybe 15 years.
Free at last.
Fantastic. Free at last? Oh, free at last. We ask for your emails to talk@ryanjespersen.com, and we always try to clear space and make sure that we get your voices out there. This was an interesting one from G, who writes in and says, Real Talk, election night, I bet, a long night for you guys, but in all honesty, for all of us. She says, but I do wonder how many folks like me were completely just sick and anxious over this election. G says, the last time I was this worried, the night of an election or of a big decision, was that 1995 referendum. At 16, I didn't stay up to watch election results. Instead, I literally went to bed wondering if the next day I'd be waking up in Canada. Imagine that as a Quebec resident. Says, looking back, I think that was just so crazy and sad, but that was the reality in Quebec at the time. Canada was something that could be taken from you at any moment. And with this election, I not only, again, feared losing Canada, but I also feared what type of Canada we were about to become. It can't be controversial to say that Poilievre's politics and Trump's aligned. It also shouldn't be controversial to say that Trump's policies have not been helpful to Americans nor Canadians. And the thought of 4 years of conservative negativity and kowtowing to Trump made me just feel sick. It was hours into the count before that horrible feeling in my stomach dissipated and I felt we were safe. Canada is safe for now. G says, Poilievre losing his seat is a bit of a shock, but deserved. Personally, I never got over him handing donuts and coffee out to a convoy, heading out to lay siege to his own city. The MP for Carleton cheers on truckers heading to tear up Ottawa. Like, wow. She says, my most shocking moment of the night was Jamil Jivani on CBC, his attempt to lay out Doug Ford on election night, to whine and gripe and expose conservative infighting when his one job in that moment was to show gratitude at being reelected and thank his family and his staff was shocking. I can see now how him and J.D. Vance get along, is that moment lacked both class and common sense. I could also see why Poilievre ran like a one-man party. Conservatives like Jivani needed to lay low during the election. G says, I love Carney's positive messaging. I feel very hopeful of the Canada we can build. It's a very tender moment in history right now, and the world needs Canada to provide a model of unity and how to stand up to bullies like Donald Trump. If you think about it, we've already taken out one bully, Pierre Poilievre. How about them apples? That from G. And we got this one from Joel, Joel, this made my entire day. He says, to the Real Talk crew, he writes this the morning after the election. He says, this is my first time writing into the show, so I want to start by thanking you for all the perspective that you've brought into my life. He says, I started listening just over a year ago. Welcome, Joel. He says, and I felt myself become far more informed about politics and other issues. It genuinely feels like I'm part of the Real Talk community. How amazing is that? Joel says, I'm part of the young male demographic that was talked about a lot during this election. I just graduated university as a teacher. And when I look out at the future ahead of me, it's unclear how I'm going to reach some of my goals. Because of that, I decided I needed to actually learn about politics and figure out who I can vote for that might help pave the way for me to achieve those goals. How about this? This is an engaged citizen. This is a dream audience member. He says, this is the first time I've truly paid attention to an election or politics in general. For the past year and a half, I've been searching for the party that's actually offering what I need. And I started listening to Real Talk because it's the most neutral Canadian political outlet that I could find. And I have to say kudos to you and Johnny. Says, this has been a tough election for me to figure out where I fit. And thanks to your show, I was able to make what I feel is an informed and serious vote for the first time. I wish I had a symbol here that I could ring. He says, I really appreciate the guests you bring on. Some episodes have me yelling obscenities. Others leave me thinking certain guests should just skip the line and become Prime Minister, Mark Carney style. I respect how you mostly put your bias aside and present facts and perspectives from across the spectrum. As somebody who's just getting his sea legs politically, hearing thoughtful, balanced conversations has been foundational in shaping my understanding of Canada's political landscape. He says, I'm sure you didn't set out to help undecided young voters find out where to cast their vote, but you definitely did that for me. Unbelievable, Joel. He says, unfortunately, something else your show has helped me realize is just how many witless oafs are out there claiming to understand politics. The sheer quantity of ignorant blowhards is unbelievable. Joel says, 5 years ago, I just assumed that anybody talking politics was smart and informed because they seemed way more sophisticated than my buddies and I. who'd spend all our time debating who the GOAT is in the NBA, Michael Jordan, or whether we could actually take on a silverback gorilla. No, you could not. Joel says, now I don't claim to be an expert by any means. I definitely don't want to sound like a know-it-all, but just by listening to Real Talk for an hour a day, I've learned to better discern the difference between blatant right-wing misinformation, incorrect left-wing talking points, and the truth somewhere in between. He says it's invaluable. I guess part of growing up and learning how to be a good citizen comes with realizing that some of the adults you admire are kind of dumb. He says, thanks again for everything you do. Keep it up. We're listening. And at risk of sounding corny, you made a difference in my life. Joel says, keep it real. And I'm looking forward to hearing your coverage of the teachers' strike that will most certainly be coming this year. That from Joel, who made our day to talk at ryanjespersen.com. We'd love to hear from you. We read the bouquets like that every once in a while. And of course, we also read a lot of emails that take us to task in the form of The Flamethrower, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. The final episode of every week. That will be tomorrow, so you've got time to get yours in. Again, to talk at ryanjespersen.com. Make sure you put The Flamethrower in the subject line. Coming up on our next episode, it will be the 2nd of May. We will say thank you face-to-face with Shannon Phillips and Ken Bosencool as we wrap up our election collaboration with those two, have been giving us bipartisan takes on not just election trends and platforms, but also the leaders' insights and now the aftermath. And we've also got a great Real Talk Roundtable coming up. We're going to talk about energy and innovation in Alberta's energy space. It's one you won't want to miss, regardless of where you work or what floats your boat. We hope you'll join us then.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design, Mike Johnston. Voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjespersen.com.